Did you know that small and medium-sized enterprises represent 99% of all businesses in the EU and account for 70% of all jobs? Close to 45% of GDP in the EU was generated by IPR-intensive industries. SMEs are the motor of the EU economy. Their potential to boost employment and drive future innovation, two key priorities for the European Union, should not be overlooked. SMEs are particularly present in innovative industries such as clean technologies, healthcare, ICT, etc. Today, more and more SMEs are looking for business opportunities in emerging markets. Many of those companies are considering China, Southeast Asia and Latin America as potential destinations. Trade relations between the EU and emerging markets have taken a new turn with the ongoing negotiation of FTAs and investment agreements. These regions are attractive destinations for European investors, with their fast-growing markets, rising middle classes and competitiveness. Due to limited resources and available capacity, SMEs face many difficulties in managing their IP assets, and particularly when this involves IPR infringement in other regions. Intangible assets such as intellectual property rights are key factors in the competitiveness of businesses in the global economy. We have to be aware that IPR-intensive industries contributed 86% of imports and 93% of exports to EU external trade. And in developing markets such as Southeast Asia, Latin American countries and China, your trademark, patent, trade secret, industrial design are endangered. Before internationalizing your business, take an active part in protecting your assets. The International IPR SME Helpdesks are here to assist you and contribute to SMEs internationalization by the provision of step-by-step advice to build a successful IPR strategy for entering into the Chinese, Southeast Asian and/or Latin American markets. The range of services offered by the Helpdesk includes a 24-hour helpline service to reply to IPR questions, free online and on-site trainings delivered by IPR experts, free publications on various IPR topics and country fact sheets, and other useful information forms such as case studies, e-learning modules, video podcasts and more. So if you have any inquiries on IP protection, contact the Helpdesk in China, SEA or Latin America to learn how to manage your IP assets and expand your business successfully.
Hello, good morning and good afternoon to everyone here. My name is Joana Almeida, Business Developer at the Chamber of Commerce and Industry Portugal-Vietnam, CCIPV. I would like to thank you all for being here on this online session on establishing a business in Vietnam. As you know, this is going to be a bilingual webinar, so I will just very briefly make this same introduction for our Portuguese audience. Bom dia a todos, então agora em português. Quero agradecer a vossa participação nesta sessão online sobre estabelecer negócio no Vietnã. Como sabem, este webinar será bilingue. Temos connosco membros da Southeast Asia IP Helpdesk, que obviamente não percebem português, e portanto eu seguirei esta moderação em inglês, não obstante, qualquer dúvida ou esclarecimento adicional que necessitem, não hesitem em contactar-nos através do chat. So back to English. I will now go through our agenda for today. We will start with Mr. Sérgio Pereira da Silva, Chairman at the Chamber of Commerce and Industry Portugal-Vietnam, CCIPV, which will make a brief introduction to CCIPV, our scope of works and services. Then we will follow with Mr. António Viñal, partner at AVCO Legal, an Iberian law firm that undertakes to support Portuguese companies interested in investing in Vietnam. Mr. António will go through the legal and tax aspects of establishing a business in Vietnam. And last but not least, Mr. Yen Vu, external expert at the Southeast Asia IP Helpdesk, which is here to talk us some intellectual property basic protection for the Vietnamese market. Here, there's some recommendations. Not this slide. The slide before, exactly, thank you. It's some recommendations for our Q&A session. I would like to ask you to add your name plus company name to your screen name so that you can enter your questions, doubts, worries in the chat, and we can approach them by the end of the session. So now we'll have Ms. Nora Bihari, Project Manager at the Southeast Asia Helpdesk, to give an introduction to this important project, offering support to our European small and medium enterprises. Nora, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Joana. Good morning, Portugal.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Vietnam. I'm very pleased to be here. And this is the second time we are organizing a joint webinar with the Portuguese Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam. So it's a very nice initiative and we should continue. Just a very quick introduction to the Southeast Asia IP SME Helpdesk services. So this is an EU initiative to support small and medium-sized enterprises, startups from EU countries to protect and enforce their intellectual property rights when they expand to Southeast Asia. All services that we are offering to companies are free of charge. The reason for that is small companies often don't have the resources to make an IP strategy, to get local advice. Therefore, you can come to the help desk and we are here to assist you to develop an IP strategy, identify your IP assets, find out how you can best protect your IP. So on this slide, you can see a quick overview on the services. So we have an inquiry helpline through which you can ask questions, customize, and you will receive a customized answer from us related to your IP issue. We organize on-site and online trainings across the year, across Southeast Asia and also Europe. We have a lot of publications on our website. I have one here with me. This is a Vietnam IP fact sheet that you can download from our website, and you can learn about what are the most important updates and what you need to know about the IP landscape of Vietnam. And last but not least, we also have some interactive learning tools such as e-learning modules if you want to learn about IP in a funnier way. And we have a nice website, so you can also find out more through the website. And Ms. Yen will tell you much more on IP, so I will not take more time, and I would like to give the floor to Sérgio. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nora. I will speak a little bit Portuguese because I know that we have Portuguese in another side of the line. Muito bom dia, Portugal. Nós estamos aqui no Vietnã, na cidade de Ho Chi Minh City. É um prazer, pelo segundo ano consecutivo, fazermos este webinar. Como sabem, a Câmara foi estabelecida em 2017, colabora arduamente com a Eurocham, somos parceiros da Eurocham e, por consequência, temos a possibilidade de oferecer às empresas portuguesas que tenham interesse no Vietnã este tipo de serviços que são gratuitos. A nossa Câmara é constituída por 5 pessoas, no qual eu sou o presidente. Temos uma senhora vietnamita que é vice-presidente, a Joana que está online e o Henrique estão neste momento baseados em Portugal e, portanto, temos depois também a Tino, que é a nossa colega aqui no Vietnã. Temos a possibilidade de falar as 3 línguas, português, os nossos colegas vietnamitas também falam português, consequentemente também falam vietnamita e inglês. Como referi, temos escritórios em Portugal, em Lisboa e aqui na cidade de Ho Chi Minh. Pertencemos à rede das câmaras de comércio internacionais e também à rede da Eurocham de Vietnã. Por último, os nossos serviços é o que praticamente todas as câmaras de comércio realizam, apoiam a internacionalização às empresas portuguesas. Não interessa o tamanho da empresa, interessa sim ter interesse em fazer a internacionalização para o mercado vietnamita. Somos conhecedores do mercado, falamos a língua do mercado, vivemos no mercado, e isso é bastante importante para apoiar as empresas. Além disso, desde a nossa fundação, 2017, fizemos a parceria não, mas o lobby, digamos, da constituição do EVFTA, que é o Acordo de Comércio Livre, no qual entrou em vigor a 1 de agosto de 2020. Neste sentido, torna-se imperioso as marcas portuguesas, os empresários portugueses, saberem como fazer proteção dos seus bens aqui no Vietnã. Sendo assim, não vou demorar muito, vou passar I'm going to speak in English now because everybody can understand. I will pass now the floor to António Viñal. Just to add that António Viñal is a member of our Portuguese chamber. He's a very active member. He's always our support in terms of legal issues in Portugal for Vietnamese companies, and vice versa. Also, the Portuguese companies that need legal support, we always recommend our member António Viñal and his office with some experience in this country around the Southeast Asia region. Thank you very much. Muito obrigado. Espero que gostem.
So,
thank you.
Yes. Yeah. So you can share the screen now. And it will confirm.
Thank you very much. Will do.
Okay, just you can put it on full screen.
Yep. Here we go.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, thank you, Nora. Thank you, Sérgio. Thank you very much for your very kind words and introduction. I will base my presentation today on how to enter the Vietnamese market. So, which options are available for Portuguese companies that wish to establish themselves, establish some form of physical presence in Portugal. Okay. I will revert now into Portuguese. I will be dividing my presentation in two main aspects. Number one, how to establish the company, and number two, what tax issues we would need to look out for whilst doing business in Vietnam. Pronto, antes de começar a tratar aqui a matéria, eu gostaria só de ilustrar a importância do mercado asiático em geral para qualquer empresa que pretenda desenvolver a sua atividade. E de acordo aqui com alguns dados que acho muito relevantes por parte do DBS Bank, a Ásia está a acrescentar 1,25 Alemanhas do ponto de vista económico, portanto, do ponto de vista do peso económico, desde o colapso da Lehman Brothers. Acrescenta uma Alemanha cada 3,5 anos à economia. Nos próximos 25 anos vai acrescentar o equivalente a 3 eurozonas. E no ano 2039, que não está assim tão longe, vai criar o equivalente económico de uma Alemanha cada 7 meses. Portanto, isto indica de uma forma muito clara que o mercado asiático torna-se imperativo para qualquer empresa europeia e para qualquer empresa portuguesa como ela. Como estabelecer uma presença? E estabelecer uma presença, mesmo que seja mínima, é fundamental. É fundamental porque são mercados, nomeadamente o vietnamita, que precisam de contacto, que precisam de presença, que precisam de uma aproximação constante. E aquilo que vamos ver hoje são as 3 fórmulas habituais. Uma escritório de representação, uma sucursal e depois uma filial. Quanto ao escritório de representação, que é a fórmula mais básica de estabelecer uma presença, o que é que permite fazer? Permite realizar estudos sobre oportunidades de mercado de investimento, permite fazer a promoção da casa-mãe e dos seus negócios e permite, naturalmente, exercer como escritório de ligação entre Portugal e Vietnã. Mas o que não pode fazer é desenvolver qualquer tipo de atividade comercial. Portanto, é extremamente útil para começar a recolher informação, para começar a fazer contactos, para perceber o mercado. E o facto de estar presente no mercado vietnamita é uma questão que pode ajudar muitíssimo no desenvolvimento do mercado. E posso falar por experiência, o nosso escritório também, embora não no Vietnã, mas nasci na Malásia, começamos a nossa introdução no Sudeste Asiático por aí e fizemos-lo exatamente através do sistema de escritório de representação. E posso dizer que foi uma boa escolha, porque permitiu começar a conhecer o mercado, começar a ser conhecido no mercado com um custo mínimo. Quais são os requisitos, portanto, para estabelecer um escritório de representação? A Casa-Mãe, a empresa portuguesa, deve ter pelo menos um ano de atividade, portanto, fácil de comprovar, fácil, naturalmente, de cumprir. A licença é concedida por um período de 5 anos, até 5 anos, com possibilidade de renovação. E atenção, que isto é muito importante, porque em outros países do Sudeste Asiático, as licenças dos escritórios de representação têm uma validade única até 5 anos. Portanto, não existe a possibilidade de continuar a marcar presença no mercado como escritório de representação, mas o Vietnã sim permite. É preciso nomear um representante local. Quando digo representante local, pode ser de qualquer nacionalidade, mas tem de ter presença no Vietnã. Importante também, não há limites quanto à contratação de pessoal, quer pessoal local ou estrangeiro. Também aqui vemos que o Vietnã oferece uma escolha, uma opção muito liberal, porque noutros países do Sudeste Asiático, a contratação de pessoal, nomeadamente pessoal estrangeiro, tem limitações. Limitações sob a fórmula de escritório de representação. Não assim no Vietnã. Portanto, mais uma vantagem que vamos encontrar no mercado vietnamita. Quanto à sucursal, pronto, aqui já podemos desenvolver a atividade localmente. Sabem, uma sucursal não é mais do que uma extensão da casa-mãe no mercado de destino, neste caso no Vietnã. Não tem personalidade jurídica própria, isto é, depende formalmente, juridicamente, da casa-mãe. Temos que comprovar uma existência prévia da casa-mãe durante 5 anos. Não precisa de ter capital social mínimo. Naturalmente, não havendo esta distinção, esta separação quanto à personalidade jurídica, a casa-mãe é responsável pelas obrigações da sucursal. É preciso nomear um representante da sucursal, mínimo um representante, mais uma vez, residente, de qualquer nacionalidade, mas residente no Vietnã, e a licença concedida por um período de 5 anos com possibilidade de renovação. Por último, naturalmente, uma filial, isto não é mais do que uma sociedade de direito vietnamita, no qual um dos sócios, o sócio maioritário, vai ser a empresa portuguesa, ou até o sócio único. Temos possibilidade de constituir o equivalente de sociedades unipessoais por cotas, sociedades por cotas, um mesmo equivalente a sociedade anónima. Okay? E podemos fazê-lo com a nossa empresa portuguesa. O capital social mínimo, em regra, não haverá, mas também as atividades, naturalmente, podemos pensar atividades financeiras, atividades de seguros, vão precisar de um capital social mínimo. Número mínimo de sócios, lá está, 1. Pode ser participado a 100% por um único sócio estrangeiro. E o número mínimo de administradores ou gerentes será 1, também, de qualquer nacionalidade, mais uma vez, terá que ser residente. Portanto, temos, de facto, um marco jurídico bastante liberal e bastante favorável ao estabelecimento dentro destas várias opções, por parte de empresas estrangeiras, situação, que, repito mais uma vez, não encontramos em outros países do Sudeste Asiático. Quanto aos impostos, e aqui marco o IRC para as diferentes opções, uma escritório de representação, naturalmente, não desenvolve atividade, portanto, não tem rendimentos, portanto, não vai pagar IRC. A sucursal e a filial estão no mesmo plano, 20%, portanto, muito próximo àquilo que conhecemos em Portugal também. Quanto ao IVA, tal e como acontece em Portugal, vamos encontrar 3 taxas, reduzindo a média geral, mas muito mais favoráveis ou com umas taxas muito mais baixas do que aquelas que encontramos em Portugal. Depois, importante, não podemos perder de vista os incentivos fiscais, que vão depender essencialmente de 2 questões. Uma, a localização, portanto, onde é que vamos desenvolver o nosso investimento, número 1, e número 2, a atividade. Naturalmente, o escritório da representação fica fora, porque o escritório da representação não vai pagar impostos. Não vai pagar IRC, pelo menos. Portanto, em primeiro lugar, de acordo com determinadas localizações definidas pelo Governo, a taxa poderá baixar do tal 20% que já vimos para 10% ou 15% durante o período de 15 até 30 anos. Ou também uma taxa de 7% durante 10 anos. Depois temos, dentro dos ramos de atividade, aqueles projetos tecnológicos em grande escala, poderão vir a pagar apenas uma taxa de 5% durante 22 anos e meio até mais 15 anos. Portanto, estamos a falar num total de 37 anos e meio a uma taxa extremamente reduzida. E, por último, para alguns setores sociais, para projetos localizados em áreas socioeconómicas difíceis, produção de maquinaria para agricultura, etc., temos isenção, portanto, 0%, de 2 a 4 anos, e redução de 50% na taxa por um período de mais de 4 a 13 anos. Okay? Portanto, se decidirmos pela opção de desenvolver a atividade localmente no Vietnã, teremos que ver se a nossa atividade, ou pela localização da nossa atividade, podemos vir a sofrer alguns destes incentivos. Por último, vou falar muito brevemente aqui sobre a Convenção, para evitar a dupla tributação entre Portugal e o Vietnã. Importante também, Portugal, no conjunto dos países do Sudeste Asiático, tem com alguns, nomeadamente Indonésia, Singapura, mas não com todos. Não com todos. Por acaso o Vietnã é um deles. E, portanto, quanto aos dividendos, temos aqui 3 taxas diferentes, de acordo com a participação da empresa portuguesa no capital da sociedade vietnamita. Okay? Portanto, se essa participação atingir 70%, a taxa de retenção na fonte no Vietnã será 5%. Se a nossa participação estiver entre 25% e 70%, então a taxa aí é 10%. E para o resto, a taxa de retenção na fonte seria 15%. Okay? Quanto aos juros, taxa única, 10%. Prestação de serviços técnicos, vai haver uma retenção na fonte de 7,5%, importante, portanto, para aquelas empresas portuguesas que possam prestar serviço no Vietnã, devem contar com essa retenção na fonte, ou pelo menos, na altura de preparar os seus orçamentos, computar esse valor. E, por último, os royalties, o valor de 10%. Antes de acabar, só também ilustrar aqui com um exemplo que acho interessante, que tem a ver com a presença, marcar presença, que, digamos, a ideia-chave que eu gostaria de transmitir. Há alguns anos atrás, quando tive a oportunidade de estar no Vietnã, em conversa com o adido comercial da Embaixada de Espanha no Vietnã, disse-me uma coisa, um erro muito frequente por parte dos empresários espanhóis e convém que os empresários portugueses não cometem. Portanto, evitem este mesmo erro. O que é que faziam? Portanto, ano após ano, levavam o seu pessoal mais júnior para as reuniões com as empresas vietnamitas. Ano após ano, trocavam, rotavam esse pessoal júnior, criando uma sensação muito, muito negativa por parte dos parceiros vietnamitas. Que, primeiro, não gostam de reunir com o pessoal júnior, como é óbvio, pelo menos querem ter um interlocutor com capacidade de decisão, e número 2, não querem ter de recomeçar a relação comercial todos os anos com uma pessoa diferente. Portanto, importante evitar este tipo de erros, importante tentar marcar algum tipo de presença, se for do setor agroalimentar, por exemplo, fazer reuniões com periodicidade, fazer demonstrações, fazer algum tipo de degustação. E, como digo, conhecendo todos estes instrumentos por parte da legislação vietnamita e conhecendo também a parte fiscal, certamente as empresas portuguesas serão extremamente bem-sucedidas no desenvolvimento deste mercado. Portanto, da minha parte, muitíssimo obrigado. Obrigado pela vossa atenção e pela vossa presença. And now I would like just to signal that my presentation has finished. I will stop screen sharing. Thank you very much for your patience, for those of you who do not understand Portuguese, and I will be happy to take any questions later on. Thank you.
Obrigada. Thank you so much, Mr. Antonio. Very informative presentation, very important tips to our Portuguese companies. I remember once again the audience to leave us their questions on the chat. Feel free. And now, without further ado, we will have Ms. Yen Vu. Thank you for being here, Ms. Yen, and the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Joana. Good morning, Portugal. Good afternoon, Vietnam. I'm very pleased and honored to be invited to speak at this webinar relating to IP protection in Vietnam for Portuguese companies. So I will start sharing my screen now. Joanna, have you seen my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Everything's okay.
Okay, thanks very much. So this is a very brief, presentation because we don't have much time. So I would like to go through the things at a quite general level. But if you do have any questions or need any further information, please do not hesitate to ask or contact us by email later on. So this is an agenda for my presentation today. First up, I will present about a general overview and IP landscape of Vietnam, and then noting some important issues relating to securing IP protection even before you enter Vietnam for business. And then I will talk a little bit about common pitfalls or common problems that happening to several businesses on the ground, or even businesses that still overseas and haven't entered Vietnam yet. And then some issues to note in technology transfer. If you have any, if you in innovative industry or having technology to transfer into Vietnam. And then finally, I will present briefly about how can Portuguese companies can benefit from the recent trade deals that Vietnam signed with the EU, the AVCO, and also the CCIPV, the international trade deal. So first up, an overview of the Vietnamese economy. So as you all know, Vietnam is one of the most open economy in Asia. The country has signed a lot of trade deals recently with its trade partners, including the CCIPV, signing with 11 countries, signing with the European Union, the AVCO, the UK FTA, and also the RCEP, including the neighboring countries like China and Korea and some other countries in the region. And these trade deals are changing the legal landscape and including the IP landscape in Vietnam. And Vietnam is currently revising its intellectual property law to reflect the country's obligations under these trade deals. So, even though the Vietnam's economic growth is slowing down, but we one of the few countries having positive GDP growth amid the COVID-19 pandemic. And at the latest news, the ADB Bank still forecast that we grow around 6% this year, 2021. Sorry. 65% this year. Even in the COVID-19, given that the pandemic is pretty well controlled in Vietnam so far, we've seen some booming in certain business sectors like e-commerce, for example, logistics, electronic payment, and also online services of healthcare, education, banking, and government. This is all the information coming from the IMF. So a little bit introduction about Vietnamese IP landscape. For those of you who are not very familiar with the IP landscape or IP laws in Vietnam, we have a unified IP law issued quite a long time ago, 2006, when Vietnam entered the World Trade Organization. The law was amended in 2009 and 2019, and it's currently under an overhaul review, and we anticipate significant changes in the upcoming year, expected to take effect in 2022. So by then, Vietnam will have a modern IP system and compatible with international standards about IP protection, and can be comparable to the Singapore's in the Southeast Asia countries. So under the IP law, the concept of intellectual property rights includes industrial property rights, which some of you or you may be familiar with, know that industrial property rights include patent, trademark, industrial designs, and so on. And it also includes copyright-related rights and also plant varieties protection. And there are three components of the IP system. The first one is registration and protection system. The second is commercialization of IP rights. And the last but not least, the enforcement of IP rights through administrative measures, civil measures, or criminal measures. So unlike more developed countries, Vietnam heavily relies on administrative measures. For example, monetary fines, to address IP infringement. And this is the most popular measures used by IP owners. Civil litigation is increasingly used by IP owners, but we don't have any separate IP court yet. So the first issue we would like to highlight is, even you are still considering to enter Vietnam market or not, you should really thinking about securing your IP rights. And because, as I will share later on in slides when I talk about common pitfalls, bad faith filing is one of the most serious issues faced by overseas businesses, even before they enter Vietnam market. So what you need to do is maybe first up trying to do some pre-filing search using online database. For example, the WIPO Trademark View or the IP Vietnam's online database, all of these are publicly available information that you can search to see whether there is anyone who has registered your trademark or not, or whether the trademark that you intend to use for Vietnam market is still available for use and registration. So as I said earlier, IP includes industrial property rights and copyrights. And industrial property rights are mainly need to be registered for it to be protected. So what you need is you file an application with the IP Vietnam, the Intellectual Property Office of Vietnam, and copyright is automatically protected upon fixation of work, but copyright registration certificate is an evidence of ownership if you need to enforce against infringement later on. And so here are some information about official fees for filing, and also the estimated registration time, just for your information. So if you are not entering Vietnam market yet, and don't have any presence in the market, then you would need to use an IP agent for filing applications for your patent, your designs, or your trademarks, or even your copyright. And there is a list of IP agents published in Vietnam by the IP Vietnam, and you can find the list in the IP Vietnam's website. And when you already enter Vietnam market and you have a business presence, for example, a rep office or a subsidiary, then you may not need to use the IP agent. Okay, so in this part, I will share some common pitfalls or common problems that a lot of businesses face in Vietnam. So first up, the first to file principle. Vietnam adopts a first to file approach, which means the earlier you file, then the more likely that you will be granted protection. And so this means that you would need to secure or file an application for your trademark or for your patent or for your design as soon as possible, and even before entering Vietnam market. And the bad faith trademark registration, it is an inevitable consequence of the first to file system, which means that a third party is aware of your trademark or is aware of your design, then it takes advantage of this system by filing an application sooner than you. Then you would face the problem of bad faith registration. And I would need to acknowledge that this practice of bad faith registration is not uncommon. Like in China as well, it caused substantial damage to the trademark owner. And for example, it may severely dilute the well-earned reputation of the owner of the trademark if the mark registered in Vietnam is used on inferior goods or services. And then, if you consider seriously about entering Vietnam market and want to sell your goods or service in the market, but if your mark is secured by someone else, then you would need to take a lot of time, cost, and effort to take back the trademarks registered by third parties. And in some cases, these actions may be not possible because of the unclear laws and regulations relating to bad faith registration. Another problem facing a lot of businesses is, the counterfeit issues, and also comes with it the online and offline enforcement. So counterfeits has always been a complex problem, and with the COVID-19 pandemic, the situation is more serious than before, especially relating to health protective products like face masks, protection suits, medical equipment, etc. And also during the pandemic, people are more likely to shop online using e-commerce platforms, to find and buy the products that they want to buy. And so these, even make the situation worse. So if you find that your products, was sold online, and those are likely to be counterfeits, then there are some measures, for example, online takedown. So some major e-commerce platforms in Vietnam, for example, Lazada, Tiki, or Shopee, they have a system for IP owners to report on infringement or counterfeits. And when they are satisfied that these products are counterfeit, that they will remove the listings. And hopefully, the shop owners will be, deterred from future infringement. And the progress of handling IP takedown notice is around 7 to 14 working days. Also, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, businesses are more likely to take place in these platforms as well, in addition to the e-commerce platform. And in these platforms, they also have a system for IP owners to report, and these platforms will also remove the listings if they find that the evidence submitted by IP owners are satisfactory. Just one thing to note, that the offline enforcement we're talking about here is the actual enforcement carried out by enforcement authorities, and there is a correlation between online and offline enforcement, in the sense that, if you want to take actions against a shop online, then we need to be really careful about whether that leads to any impact on the ground. In the sense that you don't want to alert the whole chain of infringers or their distribution network by just removing the listing online, and then that could alert and impact the offline enforcement, or a potential raid to be carried out by enforcement authorities. So just very quickly on one case study. Last year, in July, the Vietnam Directorate of Market Surveillance, which is a main enforcement authority, they collaborated with the Ministry of Public Security and conducted a raid into a warehouse covering more than 10,000 square meters in Lao Cai City, which borders China in the north of Vietnam. And inside the warehouse, the authorities seized a total of around 160,000 smuggled goods and counterfeits of various famous global fashion brands. And 3 staff members of the warehouse were caught live streaming these products on various Facebook accounts in order to sell them online. And then after each live stream session, more than 40 employees would work to process customer orders, package the goods, and have them delivered to the buyers. And the owner of the warehouse had run the live streaming based businesses since 2018. And so you can imagine the impact of these counterfeit infringers potentially cause to IP owners. And this case is under prosecution, and very likely that the infringer will be criminally prosecuted given the seriousness of the infringement. Okay, so next up is about some notes relating to technology transfer. If you do have know-how or technology that you would like to bring with you when you carry out business in Vietnam. So we do have a new law on technology transfer entered into force 1st of July 2018. And with that new law, regulations and registration process of technology transfer are more streamlined under the new law. So things to note, that under the new technology transfer law, technologies are classified into different categories, which is transferable technologies, technologies encouraged to transfer. These are the 2 main technologies that usually more likely to attract attention from authorities, in the sense that they will likely to approve the application more faster than other types of technologies. For technologies restricted from transfer, these are usually technology that are old or can cause certain damages to environment, but they still meet the threshold for being transferred into Vietnam. And the last category is technologies which are banned from transfer. And these are the type of technologies that can cause environmental hazards, and so they are banned from transfer. So just a very quick note on the contents and formality requirements. If you intend to transfer technology into Vietnam, so we do have a deadline. And in advising clients, we usually see that these deadlines are being ignored, but actually, these things are to be noted. So if you have technologies that are likely to be classified as restricted from transfer, then the deadline is shorter. You only have 60 days since the signing date of the agreement on technology transfer to obtain a license issued by the Ministry of Science and Technology. So what you need to do is, even before register the technology transfer with the Ministry of Science and Technology, you would need to apply for a license if these technologies are likely to be restricted. For other type of technologies, then the deadline is 90 days from the signing date of the technology transfer agreement. So this is the last note about technology transfer. So for some investment projects that need appraisal on the applied technologies, then these are the things that you need to note. So there is a list of registered technology from transfer under the law on technology transfer that you can refer to. If your technology is likely to be classified under those lists, then you would need to do the appraisal on your technology in the investment projects. And then technology that also pose risks to have a certain impact on the environment of Vietnam. So these are the two cases that you would need to do appraisal of the technologies with the investment projects. Okay, so this is the last part of my presentation about how can Portuguese companies benefit from the AVCO and CCIPV. First of all, geographical indications, as agricultural industry is also important to Portugal, then I think this note is important. So as you know, under the AVCO signed between Vietnam and the European Union, around 169 European geographical indications are automatically protected in Vietnam. And in that, including the 8 GIs from Portugal. And for wines and spirits, so within the 9 GI from Portugal, one is for pear, one is for cheese, and the rest are for wines. And so GIs for wines and spirits are protected, enjoy a higher level of protection than other type of GIs, in the sense that not only the GIs is protected against similar trademarks or identical trademarks. So for example, if anyone want to apply for a trademark that is identical or similar to the GI that is protected, then the trademark will be rejected by IP Vietnam. But trademarks similar, so for wines and spirits, the GIs can enjoy a larger protection, in the sense that not only the GI itself is protected, but also the translation of the GI into Vietnamese and the transliteration of the GIs is also protected against similar or identical trademarks. And then relating to, in addition to GI, about trademark, these are the new type of trademarks, or we call non-traditional marks in Vietnam, which is sound mark and scent mark. So the current IP law exclude protection for these type of marks, but in the coming time, by 2022, South Mark and Scent Mark are protected in Vietnam. So if you do have South Mark or Scent Mark, then you can think about applying for protection when the new amendment to the IP law takes effect in 2022. So for enforcement, this is also an issue that Portuguese company can rely on based on the EVFTA just signed with the EU. So for customs, and also for provisional measures, in some serious infringement cases where you really need to obtain an order from the court to prevent an infringement from occurring, or to preserve relevant evidence in respect of the alleged infringement, then you can use these obligations of Vietnam, under the EVFTA, to request the court to grant these protections for your company. So these are the end of my presentation, and I'm sorry, I'm not aware that I'm running, larger than the time that I needed, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Back to you, Joana.
Thank you so much, Envu. It was a very important presentation for Portuguese companies to take into account when entering Vietnam. We now open space for questions. Feel free to leave us our questions, unmute yourself, speak with us. For now, we have from the audience, I will refer this question to Mr. Antonio Viñal in order not to confuse the audience. We are here talking about establishing business in Vietnam, but there is a chance that companies do not need to establish themselves to export to Vietnam. Right, Mr. Antonio?
Yes, eventually for those companies who wish only to start exporting and not, although it is my recommendation that having a representative office helps immensely to build those relationships and allows the Portuguese company to establish a channel of communication with their Vietnamese counterparts. This is a recommendation. It is not mandatory, but I've seen it work and it helps and it enhances the company's chances of doing business. Nevertheless, if it's a company that just wants to export without any kind of physical presence in Vietnam, well, there are a few issues to take into account. Number one, will this be a one-off operation or will it be repeated over time? Meaning, will we have a long-term contract with our importer? Will the importer act as an agent? Will he act as a distributor? What kind of clauses should we be mindful of in that contract? Specifically, terms and conditions such as Incoterms, such as payment, method of payment, delays, penalties, breach of contract, applicable law, and jurisdiction. So all of these would naturally have to be reviewed. I would also suggest, since we have been dealing this morning with IP issues, also confidentiality and IP-related clauses that should also be taken into account. Then, certain products might need certain permits, licensing requirements so that they can actually be imported into Vietnam. Others might be subject to specific taxes. usually spirits come to mind, and these are usually the object of charges at customs. So in order to ensure a smooth flow and a smooth processing of all of these export operations, we would need to know, or we need to establish right from the very beginning what kind of requirements we will be facing, and number two, what kind of relationship we're going to have with our importer. If it's long-term, short-term, what terms and conditions would we like to agree on? And so this would be definitely my recommendation for those who, for the time being, would not consider on establishing some kind of physical presence in Vietnam.
Okay, thank you. I think that clarifies that question. Another question we have also for Mr. Antonio is how are dividends from the Vietnamese subsidiary taxed in Portugal?
Okay, well, as we saw in the presentation, there will be withholding tax according to the double taxation treaty between Portugal and Vietnam, depending on the participation in the shares of the Vietnamese company. And then once this has been cleared, now this would be a tax withheld in Vietnam. In Portugal, as we know, the corporate tax laws allow us these dividends to be exempt from taxation, as long as certain conditions are met, that the holding participation has existed for over a year, that it is at least 10% or above 10%, and that the tax at source, the rate of corporate income tax at source does not fall below 12.5%. I think it's 60% of the Portuguese corporate tax rate. So if these conditions are met, then we would be in a good condition so that these dividends would not be taxed in Portugal and would not be rolled into the company's tax base or taxable income, and therefore they would be free from taxation, notwithstanding, again, the withholding tax they might have sustained in Vietnam.
Okay, thank you. And one last question for now, at least. What issues to look out for when incorporating a company in Vietnam? Mr. Antonio, this is also for you.
Very well. Well, in this case, we would need to look at number one, timing. Okay, so we know, of course, what kind of timing we would expect in Portugal to set up a company. In Vietnam, we might be looking at roughly 1 month. Number two, this is also something specific to Vietnamese legislation, which is company names will appear in 2 languages when we have a foreign shareholder. So we would have the Vietnamese name and the English name. And thirdly, we would be looking at a number of registrations and licensing requirements. So we would have registration of the investment itself. There will be a certificate attesting to that investment. There will also be a certificate attesting to the registration with the commercial register, equivalent authority to the commercial register in Portugal. And finally, if that specific activity requires any license, which is unique, which pertains to that that business, then of course that will have to be obtained. So at least we would be looking at 2 to 3 licenses straight off the bat.
Okay, thank you. Nora, do you want to add something?
Yes. So I just see one question maybe Ms. Ian can answer this. For a newcomer company who is about to discuss distribution agreements with a local partner, how important it is to translate it to the local language, for example, an NDA or any IP contract? Would you recommend that, or an English contract, English NDA would be sufficient for getting ready the first business deal?
Yeah. Thanks, Nora, for the question. You know, for the distribution agreement and even before that, an NDA, we should, you know, highly recommend to have a Vietnamese version of the agreements as well, even though you know the laws is not requiring that the parties must have the Vietnamese versions, but usually if there is any dispute and when it is brought before the court, then usually the Vietnamese party is likely to argue that, you know, because of there is no Vietnamese version, then they don't really understand, or they don't really fully abide by the contract, and the court is you know, we've seen in practice that they requested the Vietnamese versions of the contract. So we do highly recommend to have the Vietnamese versions as well, in addition to the English versions.
Okay, thank you. I think that's important for the newcomers to understand. And maybe just one more question related to licensing. So if a company is signing a licensing agreement, is it necessary in Vietnam to register the licensing agreement?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So basically, the answer is not. Before, it used to require that a license must be recorded with IP Vietnam to take effect. However, that requirement has been removed, and companies do not need to record the license agreement to take effect.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, we have another question on the chat. So I would like to ask how it is with importing of services from Vietnam to European Union. Is there additional taxation? Is European Union-based company required to register in Vietnam? Importing services from Vietnam to European Union. So a European Union service company, if it is required to register in Vietnam in order to practice their services in Vietnam. I think I got it like that. Mr. Antonio, can you?
Well, I'm not sure if I understood correctly the question, because if it's importing of services into the EU, what I would be looking at is a Vietnamese company providing that service in the EU, and then so it's mostly what requirements the Vietnamese company would have in Europe, whether they can or cannot provide that service under which regulations, etc. So I don't see how the EU company would have to register in Vietnam. I mean, I'm not an expert in Vietnamese law, and I would not dare to answer that question. But just as a general analogy, what would happen within the EU if you want to receive a service from another country, you would not generally have to register in that country, unless the question is the other way around, and the EU company is the one exporting that service and providing that service in Vietnam. And as we've seen, you can only develop an activity with some kind of physical, established presence, at least in the long run. Then we do have, as we've seen, the double taxation treaty, where there is a tax levied on that service which might be provided, and it's 7.5% withholding tax. But that is definitely a matter which requires further investigation. It might depend on the kind of service provided, how it is provided, whether it involves the actual presence of employees in the country or whether it is done remotely. And all of these items might affect the difference or might affect how the situation is treated.
Exactly. Thank you. I think these specific questions do need some specific support case-by-case analysis. But I think overall we answered the question, and we don't have any further questions on the chat. So if no one wants to add anything else, I think we can give this for concluded. Thank you all for being here, for your time, to the audience, to our speakers. It was a very informative session, and we, both CCIPV, Southeast Asia IP Helpdesk, and AVCO Legal, you have our contacts. Keep in touch. We are here for to receive your questions. Thank you, and have a nice day and a nice week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good morning. Obrigado.
Obrigada.
Obrigada. Thank you.